Hello, thanks for having me. So that being just introduced, I'd like to speak to that bill and also the minimum wage bills that we had heard previously. So to this point, one of the things when doing some research into increasing tipped minimum wage, generally that's just a way to decrease income inequality. One of the stats that was shared earlier was from somebody who said that the average tipped worker makes between $16 and $22 an hour. The Bureau of Labor Statistics disagrees with that. They say they made $9.01 an hour. That was back in 2014. So they have perhaps a better grasp of that. And then additionally, you can have at higher end restaurants people actually making those kinds of wages, but the average for tipped workers is $9.01 an hour. So that means that 50% are making less than that, which is something that we don't want, particularly because that's already below the Rhode Island minimum wage. Another thing that concerns me about the tipped minimum wage being so low is from Saru Jayaraman, who wrote Forked, a New Standard for American Dining, wrote about the origins of tipping, which was to enable employers to save money by hiring newly freed slaves to work for tips alone. So that's the origins of tipped wages, which were in the late 1800s, early 1900s, looked down upon greatly, and currently non-white restaurant workers earn 56% less than their white colleagues, so that history remains. If anybody does have questions about some of these statistics, many of which I'm going to just not say for now because I have a lot of other things, I would be able to get you those sources.
You got us that information. If you can get later on, get that information to the committee.
Yep. So I, like Georgia from Working Families Party, ended up looking at NELP's research. So I'm going to ignore some of these stats which she said, but this does give me the opportunity to quote a CEO of a Fortune 500 company in front of the Labor Committee, which I can't believe I'm doing. So Popeye's CEO told CNN Money, this is Cheryl Bachelder, said everybody in retail is dealing with an increase in the minimum wage. We'll adjust to increased costs just like we have before. Life will go on. There's been too much hubbub about it. So when you get into a lot of employers, they're not really worried because they understand, okay, when you increase the minimum wage for one business, the minimum wage goes up for all businesses. So you're still playing on a level playing field. You're just actually have to pay your employees a living wage. And then to some stuff that was said earlier, there was a comment that the minimum wage increases have gone out of control in comparison to other states. I don't think that that's a fair comparison because, I mean, comparing one minimum wage that's too low to a bunch of other minimum wages that are too low doesn't really make sense. It's still too low. If somebody punches me in the face, that's not okay just because the other guy got stabbed. Like, it's just a silly comparison. And the same thing is with comparisons to the federal minimum wage, which has generally not been going up. So I don't think it's reasonable to compare it to as a percentage of the federal minimum wage because that's also far too low. I think that's $7.25 an hour, which is ridiculous. I think generally tacking a minimum wage to the CPI is a good idea, but that's only fair if the original minimum wage that you tack it to is fair. If the original minimum wage is too low and then you tack it to a consumer price index, what that's going to do is it's going to leave it forever too low, and that's going to give politicians an easy way to say, well, we're never going to address this because it's tacked to that. We took care of it 40 years ago or whenever they're going to say that in the future. So that's just going to exacerbate an income inequality problem. Let's see. The woman from the Chamber of Commerce said that the wage discrimination bill is good because it helps businesses. Like that was, I threw in the language about wage discrimination, but being good for businesses is correct, but the question is that really what we should be striving for? Is hurting our young people and their earnings potential in order to help out businesses increase their profits? I disagree with that on the principle. I also think that calling a 90-day reduced wage a training wage is ridiculous. People like to say, oh, well, these burger flippers shouldn't make all this money and a good living wage, because they like to disparage those jobs and say they're easy, anyone can do them. Well, if that's true, why do they need 90 days of training wage? It's because it's not a training wage. It's just reducing money for young workers and giving it to the business. The other thing that they say that will do that's a positive is it will allow employers to hire young. And that may be correct. However, then what you've done is you've taken an unemployed young person, made them employed, and made an employed older person and made them unemployed, which doesn't solve any issue. It just changes who it impacts. And a lot of older people, I would argue, have more serious bills. If you're 16, you're usually not paying rent. You're usually not trying to feed your children. But the average minimum wage worker is, I think, 36. That's also in here. But they're older. So there's another comment that individuals starting businesses have dreams and we can't stop that. But I would say that workers also have dreams. If you're if you're working a low-wage job, it doesn't mean you have a dream. It means you need to, stay alive long enough to make those dreams happen. Mike from Rhode Island Jobs with Justice, I agree with most of what he said, not just because he gave me a pin, but he also, he did mention that $18 would be a better minimum wage to go to, and this research that I have, it's a lot of papers. It also suggests that if I read the bill correctly, the minimum wage would hit $15 an hour, talking about $5.10 by the year 2022, and for a single adult in the Providence Fall River Metropolitan Statistical Area to afford basic housing, it would be $17.19 an hour in 2022. So even 15, I would argue, is a bit low, but would be a good first step. I guess I'll stop there. Any questions?
Any questions from Mitchell? You can get some of those facts in if you...
Yeah. Can I email them over? Or?
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.